Welcome back, students. So now in our journey of the standard English conventions on the SAT, we have come to the section of the apostrophes. As I've already mentioned that the apostrophes have got two basic functions. This while we were doing the introduction to the punctuation on the SAT. One is the contraction and two is the possession. So let's look into how these two functions of the apostrophe works. Contractions and possessions. Contractions and omissions are the first portion that we are going to take up. So when two words, so word number one and word number two are contracted into a single word using an apostrophe, then this is called the contraction, and some part of word 2 and word 1 is omitted. So a very simple example would be that it is becomes its. Now this its, I-T apostrophe S, should not be confused with its. Its is the possessive form or the possession. So its is nothing but the possession of it. And its is equal to it is. These are concepts which are widely tested on the SAT. So let's look into an example. This one looks absolutely the same, but they mean different. The first one says the universities recruited archaeologists to help dig the so and so and so. That's an ellipsis. So in this one, basically it means the university has recruited. The university has recruited archaeologists. So university is recruited. So the university has recruited. So it's basically a contraction of university and has by putting an apostrophe S. This one, though, is not like that. The university is archaeologists. So university hasn't recruited the archaeologists in this one. It is the archaeologist that belongs to the university. So the archaeologists of the university or the archaeologist that belongs to the university help dig with ellipsis. Right? So don't confuse between the, so basically because there is no difference out here, there are some obvious examples where there will be a difference between the contraction and the non-contracted or the possessive ones, but because there is no difference in this one, it completely goes on the meaning as to whether it is contracted or whether it is possessive. These are the common ones, of course. Not is generally contracted as N apostrophe, then apostrophe RE. These are very common ones. So you can pause the video and have a look. Now these are some tips on the apostrophes and the possessive nouns. First of all, the singular proper noun that ends in an S only gets an apostrophe. So basically, if it's a proper noun, like in this one, Dickens, right? This is the noun, Dickens. Charles Dickens, name of a very famous English author, right? Charles Dickens. Now, if I want to say that Dickens had something in possession, so logically I should have been writing it like this. So Dickens's book, something like that. Yeah, Dickens's novel, right? Something like that, right? But then, yeah, that doesn't happen. The rule says very clearly that if a proper noun ends with an S, you don't need to add an S to the end of it. So this becomes the possessive of Dickens. So Dickens and then an apostrophe would actually mean that this is the possessive form of this proper noun that ends with an S. This only happens with proper noun that ends with an S, not in case of any other. As for example, Tom, right? If we are looking at Tom, no, it got to be Tom's, right? So obviously it will not be that we only write it as, Tom and then an apostrophe doesn't signify the possessive of Tom. Tom has got to be Tom's. This rule only applies two proper nouns that end with an S to start with. Only add an apostrophe to the plural proper noun that ends in an S. Same thing. So now, if basically if we have plural that ends with an S, you just add an apostrophe to the end of it to signify the possessiveness. You don't add another S. So basically, what that means is anything that ends with an S, you don't add another S to it to signify. So most of any nouns actually, the plurals would be with an S. As for example, if we have boy, it will become boys. Many of them, of course. If we have girl, it will become girls. And if I want to show possession of the boys' bags, something like that, it has got to be like this: girls' uniforms, something like that, right? So this is how it goes. So the next one is very simple. I guess that everybody would know this, so I don't think that this needs too much deliberation. That all the possessive pronouns or the personal pronouns, right? They don't have an apostrophe S to make them personal, so they are already personal, like my, mine. So it cannot be anything like my's, right? It cannot be anything like. So this is your, yours, hers, hers. So this is, I think, beyond what we want to speak about in this topic. So for singular ones, obviously it is, as I have already told you, the dog's leash. So if it doesn't end with an S, it is apostrophe and S to show the possession. And if it is plural, as for example, dog and then dogs, so the dog's leash, right? So leash, it cannot be leash actually. If there are multiple dogs, then there's got to be dogs' leashes, right? So we have to be very careful out here. Sometimes SAT tricks you with this kind of question. Alice, for example, Alice came home, and was greeted by her dogs, sorry, got an extra out here, dogs wagging tail. Right, the sentence is incorrect because this has got multiple dogs out here. We've got single tail. Unless they are all Dobermans, I'm quite sure that multiple dogs will have multiple tails. So it has got to be tails. So this is how sometimes SAT tries to trick you. Obviously, in examples which are a bit more trickier than this one. And for plural nouns that don't with an that end with an S, you have to add an apostrophe S. That goes without saying. So children, as for example, children obviously is plural anyway. But if you want to put that as children and possessive of children, then it has got to be a possessive and apostrophe N. Similarly, geezes, right? So this is how the rules of the apostrophe goes. This is very important. Whenever you have a compound noun, whenever you have got a compound noun, that means A and B, and if you want to show the possessive, only the last one gets the apostrophe S. So as for example, this one, Bob and Jim's bait shops, right? Bait shop, Bob and Jim's bait shop. So this is a compound. So basically they are one entity who own a singular bait shop, right? Ryan, Jessica, and Eleanor's parents. So all the three have got the same parents, right? But if you have got different, as for example, if I wanted to say that A and B have got different shops, right? So it has got to be A's and B's, like in this one, Bob's and Jim's bait shops, wherein there are two different shops. This is both of them own a different shop, right? Ryan's, Jessica's, and Eleanor's parents. So each of them have got a different set of parents. So these are some rules that we need to understand when we look at the apostrophes. Nutshell. There are two jobs that an apostrophe does, never to confuse between the contraction part and the possession part. So if it is its, it would mean it is. This is very commonly tested on the SAT. They'll give you four choices. One is will be its, one will be whose, right? One will be say who, and one will be its, right? So it's very commonly tested on the SAT. So, and the possessive. So there are two functions of the apostrophe. Don't confuse between the contracted ones and the possessive ones. Stay tuned. The next section will be on the M dashes. Now we don't deal with the N dash or the hyphen, but next section will be only on the M dashes, which is tested on the SAT.